Hello everyone, and welcome back to the History of the Ancient World channel. Today, we're journeying back in time to the Fertile Crescent, to the heart of Mesopotamia, to uncover the stories of the mighty Assyrian Empire and the formidable kings who forged it in fire and stone. From a humble city-state on the banks of the Tigris River, Assyria rose to become one of the most dominant military and political powers the ancient world had ever seen. But this empire wasn't built in a day. It was the product of centuries of ambition, innovation, and the iron will of a succession of extraordinary rulers. Who were these men? What drove them? And how did they create an empire that stretched from the mountains of Iran to the shores of the Mediterranean? Our story begins in what historians call the Old Assyrian period, around 2000 BCE. At this time, the city of Ashur was a bustling hub of trade. Its merchants established a vast network of trading colonies, most notably in Anatolia, modern-day Turkey. These weren't military outposts, but sophisticated commercial centers. One of the early rulers we know of from this era is Ilushuma. He claimed to have established freedom for the Akkadians, meaning he may have liberated merchants from certain taxes or trade restrictions. This focus on commerce laid the economic foundation for Assyria's future might. Kings like Ereshamvi continued this legacy, building temples and fortifying the city, establishing a dynasty that saw Assyria as a key player in regional trade. But the political landscape of the ancient Near East was a chessboard of shifting alliances and sudden betrayals. The rise of Babylon under Hammurabi eventually overshadowed Assyria. Then came the Kassites, the Hurrians, and the kingdom of Mitanni. For a time, Assyria found itself a vassal state, its ambitions held in check by more powerful neighbors. But the Assyrian spirit was one of resilience. They were waiting, biding their time, learning from their rivals. The spark of revival came during the Middle Assyrian period, around the 14th century BCE. A king named Ashurbanipal is often credited with setting Assyria back on the path to greatness. He was a master diplomat and a shrewd strategist. By communicating with the pharaoh of Egypt as an equal, he declared Assyria's independence and reasserted its status as a major power. He began the long process of reconquering lost territories and pushing back against the Mitanni. His successors, like Adad-nirari Faon and Shalmaneser Fuans, were relentless military commanders. They turned Assyria's revived spirit into a fearsome war machine. Shalmaneser I is famous for his brutal campaigns, defeating the Mitanni once and for all and deporting thousands of people, a policy that would become a hallmark of later Assyrian rule. But the true titan of this era was Tukulti-Ninurta I. His name itself means, "My trust is in the god Ninurta, the Assyrian god of war." And he lived up to it. He was a pious man, a great builder, and a ruthless conqueror. His greatest military achievement was the unthinkable. He marched on Babylon, defeated the Kassite king, and sacked the ancient, venerable city. He even stole the cult statue of Babylon's chief god, Marduk, an act of immense symbolic power. He proclaimed himself King of Assyria, King of Babylon, King of Sumer and Akkad. To celebrate his victories, he built a whole new capital city across the river from Ashur. Yet his reign ended in tragedy. His constant wars and his sacrilege against Babylon may have turned his own people against him. He was assassinated in his new palace, allegedly by his own sons. After his death, Assyria entered another period of relative decline. But this wasn't the end. It was merely the calm before the storm that would be the Neo-Assyrian Empire. This is the Assyria that most people think of. The unstoppable military juggernaut, the empire of palaces adorned with scenes of conquest and lion hunts. The architect of this new age was Ashurnasirpal II. Ascending the throne in 823 BCE, he was a figure of terrifying ambition and efficiency. He inherited a stable kingdom and turned it into an empire-building machine. His campaigns were meticulously planned and executed with shocking brutality, which he made sure to document in excruciating detail on his palace walls. These reliefs were not just art, they were propaganda, designed to intimidate rivals and subjects alike. He would flay his enemies, impale them on stakes, and burn their cities. But he was also a master administrator and builder. He moved the capital to the city of Nimrud and launched a massive building program, culminating in a palace that was the wonder of its age. To inaugurate it, he threw a legendary party, feasting tens of thousands of people for 10 days. His son, Shalmaneser III, continued his father's work, spending most of his 35-year reign on campaign. He pushed Assyrian borders further than ever before, famously clashing with a coalition of Syrian and Israelite kings at the Battle of Karkar. We know of this from his famous black obelisk, which depicts King Jehu of Israel bowing and paying tribute. This artifact is one of the earliest extra-biblical references to a figure from the Hebrew Bible. Shalmaneser III solidified Assyrian control over the Levant and established a system of provinces and vassal states that would define the empire. However, the king who truly transformed Assyria into a true, consolidated empire was Tiglath-Pileser III. When he seized the throne in 745 BCE, Assyria was facing internal strife and external threats. He reformed the army, creating a professional, standing force that was loyal only to him. He also reformed the government, breaking up large provinces to prevent powerful governors from challenging his authority. And he perfected the policy of mass deportation, not just as a punishment, but as a tool of empire building. He would move entire populations from one end of the empire to the other, breaking local loyalties and creating a new, mixed, Aramaic-speaking imperial identity. He conquered Babylon, the northern kingdom of Israel, and laid the groundwork for the empire's peak. This peak was reached under the Sargonid dynasty, starting with Sargon II, who, like Tiglath-Pileser, was a usurper who took the throne. He was a brilliant general, securing the empire's borders and even building another magnificent new capital, Dur-Sharrukin, or Fortress of Sargon. His son, Sennacherib, is perhaps the most famous, or infamous, of the Assyrian kings, largely due to his portrayal in the Bible. He is remembered for his siege of Jerusalem, an event he documented in great detail on his prisms, boasting that he shut up King Hezekiah like a caged bird. While he failed to capture the city, his campaign devastated the kingdom of Judah. Sennacherib also had to deal with the perennial problem of Babylon. After a series of rebellions, he did what even Tukulti-Ninurta I had stopped short of. He utterly destroyed the city in 689 BCE, leveling it to the ground. He then moved the capital to the ancient and grand city of Nineveh, transforming it into a metropolis of unparalleled splendor. Sennacherib was eventually murdered, and after a power struggle, his youngest son, Esarhaddon, took the throne. Esarhaddon was a fascinating character, quite different from his father. He was plagued by illness and what seems to have been a deep sense of paranoia. Yet, he was an incredibly effective ruler. He reversed his father's policy on Babylon, ordering the city to be completely rebuilt, earning the loyalty of the Babylonians. His greatest military achievement was the conquest of Egypt. For the first time, a Mesopotamian king ruled over the two great cradles of civilization, the Nile and the Tigris-Euphrates valleys. The Assyrian Empire was at its absolute zenith. The final great king of Assyria was Esarhaddon's son, Ashurbanipal. While his father and grandfather were defined by their conquests, Ashurbanipal is best remembered for his culture. He was one of the few ancient kings who could read and write, and he was deeply passionate about it. He dispatched scribes throughout his empire to collect and copy every piece of written knowledge they could find. The result was his magnificent library at Nineveh, a collection of tens of thousands of clay tablets on every subject imaginable: literature, medicine, mathematics, magic, and history. It is because of Ashurbanipal's library that we know so much about ancient Mesopotamia today, including the Epic of Gilgamesh. But don't mistake him for a simple scholar. He was also a ruthless warrior who crushed rebellions, including a major one led by his own brother in Babylon, and brutally sacked the Elamite city of Susa. But empires, no matter how mighty, are not eternal. After Ashurbanipal's death, the Assyrian Empire began to unravel with shocking speed. A combination of internal civil war, overstretched resources, and the resurgence of its enemies, particularly the Babylonians and the Medes, proved fatal. In 609 BCE, a coalition of these forces besieged and destroyed Nineveh. The fall was swift and total. The empire that had terrorized the ancient world for 3 centuries vanished from history, its great cities buried beneath the sands, only to be rediscovered thousands of years later. The legacy of the great kings of Assyria is complex. They were brutal conquerors, but they were also brilliant administrators, engineers, and patrons of art and science. They created a blueprint for empire that would influence the Babylonians, the Persians, and even the Romans. Their story is a powerful reminder of the heights of human ambition and the fragile nature of power. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through the history of the great Assyrian kings. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to History of the Ancient World and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure into the past. Let us know in the comments which ancient ruler or civilization you'd like to see us cover next. Until then, stay curious.